Okay, good morning. This is the weekly Purley Bid COVID-19 update. I hope you can all see the side here. I will keep this nice and short. Thanks for dialing in. First and foremost, I hope everyone's safe and well at the moment. The purpose of this meeting is just to quickly go through the key areas of where we can provide support, whether it's from council government level, whether it's through financial updates, and whether it's through local updates. So moving on as quickly as we can with this. First of all, we're going to have a look at, just mentioned the financial updates, government, and then the local updates is put onto the agenda there than any other business. First of all, we've got Kevin Moss from Palmerston Accountants on here. Honestly, I haven't gone through an agenda with Kevin, but he said it's a few things with regards to the current situations from an accounting point of view, which I think is fairly crucial at the moment. So I've listed a few topics up there. If he wants to cover or not, that's fine. But Kevin, are you okay just giving a summary from accountancy point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a whole raft of businesses, large and small, who are, I think, finding the detail of the recent announcements from the government a little bit difficult to find their way through. That's partly because there's so much of it, and it's partly because it hasn't actually all come out into place as yet. As we know, for example, the actual process for applying for furlough and the portal is not yet open. So these sorts of things are definitely things that you should be in touch with your agents and advisors around. They as are we, are being updated on a daily basis, not only by HMRC, but also by our professional bodies. And you know, just keep your eye on the information and keep in touch with your advisors, because they will be able to guide you through the actual process for furloughing the loan schemes. And I can't see all of. I need to change my view to figure out. Sorry, we're still getting used to Zoom. 3 weeks ago we were 25 people in an office. And now we're 20, 21, 22 people working from home. But yeah, that actually I think is relevant. We as a business have been through furloughing 4 or 5 of our employees, partly due to the lack of technical resources, and also partly due to the fact that we need to make sure that the business can maintain a cash balance, which is absolutely crucial in these times. Go back to the old mantra when business becomes a little bit difficult, which is turnover is vanity, profit is vanity, and cash is king. So you need to keep access to cash. One of the ways to do that, unfortunately, is furlough, but it does offer some real possibilities around maintaining the strength of the business, maintaining cash, and ensuring that it's going to be there for those employees when we come out of the other side of this, whenever that might be.
And I think furloughing is probably quite key to a lot of the businesses around here. Yes. As you said, this is a very flexible, movable beast at the moment. Very fluid. It's changing from day to day. A lot of people put people on furlough, and as you said, the process of payment isn't in place yet. Are we confident that it'll be in place by the end of the month? And how do we go about claiming the furlough? Do we just pay as a business and then claim it back, or how does it work out?
Yes. So if you've got cash in your bank account, then you will pay your employee the amount that you intend to furlough. So as we know, the furlough amount is either 80% of their salary, but that is capped at an amount of £2,500. So for some higher paid employees, that's not going to represent all of their wages. Obviously, businesses can choose to make up the additional 20% or shortfall if they wish to, but that's entirely discretionary. So the furlough period runs from the 1st of March through to currently the end of May. So it's a 3-month period. It's quite likely, given the way that things are going and with Boris in hospital at the moment, that is going to be extended. So look for that to be extended. The actual information that you need, key bits, again, your advisor can let you know, but you need your PAYE reference number and the dates and the amounts and the employee national insurance number to be able to recover that furlough payment. And also pretty critical is a furlough letter agreement which your employee has agreed to. You need to be speaking to your employees and helping them understand that this is the best option for the business. Other options potentially would be if there is a variation clause in their contract of employment to vary their hours down substantially, which would obviously impact on pay, and that is likely to be far less beneficial to the business, not only from a financial perspective, but also from an employee buying perspective. You want to keep your employees on board. You want them to be there when the business, as I say, comes out of the other side of this. So pretty crucial to have your dialogue with the employees, and absolutely crucial to have an agreement with the employees in place. The revenue are going to have a period of 5 years after this all comes to an end to look back and look at some of that record keeping. So although don't imagine they're going to be examining 100% of the businesses, there is the potential there.
Kevin, can I ask a question?
Yep.
We just established like cash is king. So obviously we're in a situation where a lot of businesses don't actually know when we are going to go back, when the government will make these key crucial decisions to say, okay, we can relax the lockdown and start to get businesses back to the high street, blah, blah, blah. So there is a big question mark there. So cash is king. So I would imagine there's a lot of businesses nationally or in Purley sort of saying, well, I've got this cash in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long we're going to be in this position. Obviously, what support we're getting. But is there a view that, because obviously you've said, look, if you've got cash in the bank and obviously you can pay salaries along the furlough terms, and then when the money comes from the government, you can offset them. But the question I'm asking really is, obviously, we cannot claim the furlough until the portal becomes live, which we anticipate is the end of April.
Yep.
So when that money actually becomes live from the government, we don't know. You're probably going into May and what have you. And obviously that's a long time for employees to wait. But some businesses may be in a position to say, look, cash is king, but I need to wait for that government support before I can actually pay those employees. So they're potentially waiting a long time. What is the view on that? Because ultimately, through no fault of our own, some of our employees may have to wait until we get that money from the government to sort of say, there you go, there's your furlough, 80%. Is there a view on that? Because obviously people are struggling.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it depends to a certain degree on the business and the type of business. A lot of businesses are going to be able to contact their suppliers and perhaps if they're in contractual arrangements with monthly payments, can negotiate things around, let's defer the payment, let's extend the contract to the end of, roll on sort of 3 or 4 months to the end of the contract. So I don't actually have to pay you. So those, some of those supplier side pressures can be deferred, thereby meaning that there is more cash available. And I think the view is that furloughed employees are still contractually entitled to every. The furloughing is not a removal of that employment obligation, and part of the contracts of employment is that you pay them a salary. or you pay them an amount which they are due. And I think, unless the business really is up against the wall and is going to go into the red and has no other means of obtaining cash, then I would suggest that making payments to employees should come first.
No, good question there. Just moving on.
Simon, can I just on that point? Just to take that point further. Obviously, none of this can happen until the HMRC's portal is actually set up, and so that companies can respond and say, yes, I've got person X, Y, and Z on our payroll. Yeah, that's one. Secondly, the 80% that the government is going to contribute, and the gentleman previously who asked the question, because you're not going to get it till probably end of April or even early June. So companies are having to fund it themselves at the moment. Are the companies obliged to pay the full 100%, or can they just pay the 80%?
Well, 80% is if you put your employee onto furlough, then 80% is the amount that you would be expected to pay.
That's right. So you're not obliged. It's just, a goodwill you might pay.
There's no obligation to make up the difference between an employee. If an employee is on furlough, then the obligation is to pay either 80% of the salary or $2,500, whichever is higher.
That's a very significant point, but I don't think a lot of businesses quite understand that. They just feel, oh, we're getting 80, we've got to top it up by 20. You don't have to top it up.
Absolutely no obligation to do that, mate.
Okay.
I'm glad.
Sorry, Simon, can I just add something as well? So I think Kevin alluded to it earlier, that it's all subject to employment law in the contract. So I think you would have to be careful as a business if you were looking at not paying your staff and you were waiting. I think actually by contract you would need to pay your staff. There are options available, and that might be that you could use some of the support grants or the loans to be able to pay your staff in the meantime. But you are right, at the moment they were talking about not having the system in place till June. They brought that forward, so it looks like HMRC will have it already by the end of April, which is better news than June, but still very difficult for employers who are, again, as Kevin said earlier, cash is king at the moment, isn't it? So what we would say to any businesses that is really struggling to pay their staff, if you want some one-to-one advice given on your personal circumstances, we can give you that, and we can find ways in which you can get that through the local growth hub and all kinds of bits and pieces. So do talk to us, contact us, and hopefully, Simon, you can just email our address at the end of it so people know where we are.
With this video, we'll send out the links as well. I know, Carol, you've been doing an awesome job along with all the Growth Hub and other support networks on providing support for people. It's been very impressive. Kevin, one question before we move on, because I know we do need to move on with furlough. Somebody was talking to me yesterday about they've got employees on paid weekly basis. Do they have to carry on paying them on a weekly basis, or can this top up into every 3 weeks or month?
Well, again, I think this probably goes back to the contractual arrangements that were in place with the employee. So, if you're contracted to pay weekly, then I'd suggest that that's what you should be doing. Okay,
and then just moving on again, loan schemes as well. We've had a lot about loan schemes. It starts off being a great idea, then it seems to be everyone take a bit of caution about it, and then now the rules seem to have relaxed a little bit, that it's not going to be personal guarantees, and that they've widened the realms of it. Have you got any information on from your point of view with loan schemes and suggestions?
Yeah, talk to the bank and push through. Is the way. I mean, I think rather like after the financial crisis in 2008, the banks were there as a conduit to flow cash out. But in reality, they are making it, or have been making it, very difficult. I think they've had their knuckles wrapped. So if you've had a slightly negative experience, give it another go. Keep going, just keep banging on the door, because I think it's absolutely critical to be in touch with these institutions, and they will come on board.
So the message is that if you've been there once and it was bad, go back there again, but also that do think hard before taking out a loan, I guess, because they are loans, you do have to pay them back. They're not.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there are grant schemes out there. The rates, small business rates schemes, rate relief schemes also are offering grants, over and above the furlough arrangement, which itself is a taxable grant to the business.
Okay, Marlon?
Yeah, sorry. From a financial point of view, obviously we've had a lot of feedback from businesses that we've engaged in terms of the loan schemes designed to help businesses that obviously are need that financial support. Now, obviously the government have launched this as part of the support sort of profile and package, but we understand from a business point of view or from a banking point of view, if you're looking at underwriting and criteria, the business would have had to be in a position to get a loan before this and after this. So therefore, if your business if you couldn't fit the criteria to get a type of loan before this happened, then it's unlikely that you're going to get it afterwards.
Yeah.
It's
only fair, I guess.
I think that's moved on a little bit, but like all of the the advice and the rules which are out there, I think this is a very much a moving landscape. So you're right, Marlon. I mean that the banks were saying in order to qualify for a business loan, you probably will have to give a personal guarantee. And the business itself would have had to have been a business which would have qualified for a loan outside of the business interruption loan. I think the banks again have been told that they need to relax those criteria substantially.
Have they done that? Have we got any evidence to say?
They have, Marlon. They have done that. They had their knuckles severely wrapped. I mean, and actually some of the stories and case studies that came through from businesses where interest had risen to 30%. I mean, it was ridiculous. So very disappointing reaction from some of the banks, I have to say. Government, and so it was very heavily lobbied on, and government have wrapped their knuckles. So I do think there is opportunities here, and I think Kevin is absolutely right. If you were refused before, talk to them again. We do have our own Coin Enterprise Loan Fund, by the way, which might be useful. So that is for businesses who are a bit further away from accessing finance. So, you know, you may, if you've been refused finance before, or, you know, you're looking at something that has I think it's about 5% on the interest rate, do talk to us again, and we might be able to help you. The loans aren't big loans, so it only goes up to 50,000, but in the short term, it might help businesses going forward. But I think the big message is talk to your bank, because you may find that they're much more amenable now they've had their knuckles wrapped.
Okay.
Good advice. Thanks for that. And Kevin, I had a couple other bits on there. Just wrapping up, because I know time's moving on. Any other information, useful HMRC updates or anything like that?
I can't think of anything immediately. But as you know, I think, Simon, we're running our own briefing, which I'm more than happy to share with you, and you can post that on the website. And we're updating that briefing on a weekly basis.
You know, it was a fantastic briefing. Thanks a lot for that, and it is getting put onto the website. It was one of the best, most summaries I've seen. We've got so much information coming in, but that was a really good one from Palmerston's. I do appreciate that. Okay, so just like to move on. Emma unfortunately can't make it on today from Barclays. I know she's running back-to-back meetings and she's hoping to come in a lot. But if there's any bank-related information, obviously speak to your own bank, and some general questions will go up on this site. Actually, that was one question that we were going to raise, was how people pay money in, because there's a lot of banks that are closed at the moment. So we'll dig for that answer, and again, put that onto our site and share it through WhatsApp of how you pay money in. Carol, you at the Croydon Council, some people throw stones at you sometimes, but I think this time you've been absolutely plan blind. You've been superb with what you've been doing and running things so quickly. Have you got a summary of where you are with things at the moment?
Yes, I have. So, so government announced the support packages and the grants. Unfortunately, what they hadn't done necessarily is worked out what the criteria really was underneath that. We've managed to get the criteria, and we've built a whole portal. There's a whole procedure in place. Really stuff that you guys don't need to worry about, because what you need to worry about is what's happening at the moment inside your businesses. So my priority at the moment is to try and get those grants to you as quickly as possible through our rates team. So what do you need to know? You should have, so first of all, you need to know, we feel we know everybody who should have the grant. So we have sent out emails and text messages for all those that we have electronic details for, that should take them straight through to the portal. Unfortunately, understandably, some people thought that was spam. I don't think it was worded massively well myself, but the majority of people managed to do it, but some people thought it was spam. So we have sent out some communication saying, if you haven't heard from us or you thought something was spam, please don't worry. We do have a way that you can quickly apply. In fact, you don't have to apply. You're just verifying your details, really. And those details are just your bank account details. So we've had 1,000 responses in the last 3 days. I have 35 staff working full-time on it, 7 days a week. We have already started our payment run, so businesses are already getting the payments. I would like to say that we never make a mistake, but that's not true. So if you are sitting there going, well, I haven't received anything, it might be that we didn't have your electronic details and we wrote to your business address. And of course, if you are not open, you're not going to get that letter. You're not going to receive what you have to do in order to access it. So I would say any business that hasn't heard from us, that feels that they match the criteria or don't know whether or not they match their criteria, talk to us. We have an inbox called, an email address, economicdevelopment@croydon.gov.uk. I promise you, I have 10 officers looking through that email box. So you should hear from an officer within a couple of hours of emailing it, and we will be your liaison with the rates team. So you can speak to human beings because it's a human response that we hope that you get. It's not easy, I've got to say, just because of the overwhelming response we've received, and some businesses are genuinely just not entitled to it. So this is a support grant that's based on whether or not you are paying business rates, and actually some people aren't necessarily paying the rates. It might be their landlord paying the rate. So we've had quite a few businesses come through to us and say, but I don't pay the rate, what happens there? And we would say, well, we have to pay the grant to your landlord, but we do have quite a few examples of where businesses have talked to their landlords and said, you know, I know that you've got the grant, can you share the love? And they have. So we've got some very kind landlords that have been very proactive with that. We've got other landlords, not quite so proactive, I've got to say, but unless you have the conversation, then you just don't know. So I think Kevin's sort of message earlier, now is the time to be talking to people, talking to your suppliers, talking to your landlords. If you're not sure whether you're, as I say, if you're not sure whether or not you are entitled to this grant, talk to us. You are welcome to contact me by phone, or any of my team by phone. I would just say to you though, we have had an overwhelming response. So if you can't automatically get through to us, chuck us the email, because whilst I'm on the phone, I can see the emails coming through. And Simon, I really don't mind if you want to give out my own email, because that way people can get hold of me. Alongside the accessing of grants, we have a plethora of other business support. So what the biggest problem is the fact that it's confusing. It's confusing for businesses what they're entitled to, when they can get it. And actually, we keep saying cash is king, but the reality is a lot of our businesses are sitting there waiting for cash to come in and maybe struggling at the moment. So there is quite a significant amount of business support that the government have put in place So there is telephone one-to-one sessions that can look at personal circumstances, that can help you access advice, guidance, funding. There's quite a bit of funding that's coming through from different streams, not just the government. So if you sign up so we have a newsletter, we're happy to keep you updated, but it sounds like Kevin has kept you updated with all the government updates, which is great. I wish everybody was as organised as you. That's phenomenal. I think really this is a community response. So, you know, as a council, most of our services are looking at frontline services, so public health, schools, children, that kind of stuff. But business is way up there. It's really important that we ensure our economy, as much as we can, we support, because we don't know, this is unprecedented. And so it's really important for us to be able to share the information we have so that you guys get the money that you deserve, actually. We do know there is also gaps in the funding that the government have announced, but they are changing the criteria. So what I would say is, if you guys are facing that where you are, do let us know, because then we can lobby on your behalf, which is what we've been doing. And we have already seen the government amend criteria in order to increase some of the grants because of that lobbying. So it really does work. Talk to your landlords about rent breaks, payment breaks. Talk to your suppliers around cash is king. I would strongly suggest you pay your employees, but I know that's very difficult. If you are having problems accessing loans, talk to us. We will be able to help you, and we will be able to do that quickly. So that's pretty much all I've got to say. Everybody's circumstances are different, and so as I say, do not feel that you have to do it by yourself. We are happy to help, we want to help, and the government have put stuff in place so that you can actually talk to real humans. I have to say as well, the business community have done an unprecedented response to working on frontline services, so a huge thank you to all of you that are doing that. But there may be other opportunities. So for example, if you are a restaurant and you've had to shut down, I know that there are flexibility in things around licensing, things around, apologies, someone's trying to call me through my computer, switch them off. There's flexibility around planning and change of use at the moment in order to help you be able to diversify. So again, if you think that might be something you want to do, we're here to help.
Thank you so much. Honestly, everyone, the council has been playing a blinder at the moment, and things aren't going to go 100% on everything all the time, but what they've been doing has been absolutely great. I know we've got Peter Russell on from Street and Marsh at the moment with the legal stuff. I would like to hold you off for a minute, Peter, just because there's a couple of things falling off the back of what we're talking there about on the loans. Now, a couple of anecdotal things with the loans, and Carol, you'll be interested to hear this. In the initial letter that came out, there's been two types of communication. So there's the initial letter to businesses, which has a security code and the rest of your details to put in. Now, one of our members struggled very hard with this, and after being on the phone, I think they had to wait about, I don't know, an hour or so on the phone because you guys are so busy, realized that on the security code, there was an extra digit. And it wasn't until that digit was taken off that you could put it in, and then you managed to get through. So a point of note for people, if you're getting a response saying we can't match your records, try and take off the last digit from the security code and see if that works. But also speak to the guys, because they talk you through that.
And the other thing I would say, so first of all, huge apologies to whatever business is sitting on the phone for an hour. So we're trying to take away the stress of that for you. So rather than phone the rates team, let us take that stress. Just email us, and we will actively go out and find out what is happening for you.
Okay.
Sorry, Simon, if I could, I don't know if you can hear me, Simon.
I can hear you, Deva.
Yeah, can I just add to what you just said? Carol and her team have been absolutely brilliant. And it's a great comfort to businesses that we got a unit like that. She's really gone out of her way to help us with information over the last few days, and we're really grateful for that, Carol.
No, absolutely. Secondly, of note for people, this is also, Carol, and I think everyone will be interested to hear this. So speaking to Lisa from Get Fired now, unfortunately, for one reason or another, she can't be on the call at the moment, but she said that she's got a notification that the grant funds are pending to come into her account. She submitted the form last Monday, and so as Carol said, it's around about a 7-8 day process. And I think that's just a phenomenal turnaround in the speed of a new process to get this through to someone. I don't know if this is going to be an exceptionally good turnaround or this is what we're going to expect, but the first indications are coming through that the process is working, and it's taken, if you give yourself 2 weeks, it should come in well within that, I think. But that's good news there, Carol.
So we gave ourselves 7 days. I mean, the reality of that, I mean, I would actually hope that the process refines itself as we move forward and it takes less, actually. So, you know, technically we've given 7 days from the time you implement it. We did have a call it computer says no glitch with our new portal on the Monday, just because of the sheer volume of people accessing the portal at the time. That's been rectified. That's, you know, no longer an issue at all. And again, we don't expect businesses to take that on board. What I would say to you, you know, is we are trying really hard to make sure that that process doesn't take 7 days. Actually, I'd like to see it more like 5 days or 3 to 5 days. And the more we do it, the easier it's going to become. So, but again, if you don't hear, give us an email. We'll chase it for you. But hopefully you don't have to do that, and actually it all goes through. It looks to me like the payment runs are running quite well now at the moment. We're keeping an eye on it. One thing it has taught us all as Croydon employees and Croydon Council is talking across teams. So no silos anymore, I can tell you that now. And making sure that we understand what pressures they're under and vice versa. So we are your mouthpiece. We are the way that you can find information without sitting on that phone for an hour. And the team are there, happy to help.
Okay, that's great. Also, Hannah, UMMA, I believe there's also an extra grant funding for sports facilities. Is that right?
Hello, I don't know if I'm on mute anymore.
You're not, I'm just on mute.
No, okay, fine. Yeah, we got notified from that. We have actually already applied for that. So I think it's between 310K, but we don't obviously know what we would be entitled for or anything, but we filled in that application and so on. So fingers crossed that will help more for like because community amateur sports club for the boxing side. So hopefully that will can benefit that a lot.
No, yeah, and really appreciate you sharing that, and we'll share it on for other people that will want to know. Moving on just before we come to Peter, with regards to the Purley bid, the whole thing that Carol was saying was about making sure that everyone claims and they don't have the details of everyone. As a bid, we've been going through our database list and we're working through it. It's a long process of calling up people for whatever details we've got and making sure people are filling out these forms. We will get to everyone as much as we can do. It is quite a tiresome process, but Catherine's certainly been doing the most awesome job on this at the moment, and I think it's been very well received. Some people have been really struggling with this, and it's really helped. The other thing that BID's doing for you, we're working with the Croydon Council Task Force, so keeping up to date with Carol and the other teams, Federation of Small Businesses, etc., about hand sport. White Label are doing seminars every Wednesday morning, and they're also sending out newsletters every evening after the update. So if you can get yourselves onto that, I'd recommend that as well. Please.
That's at 10 o'clock, by the way, Simon.
Tomorrow morning, yeah. I'll put a link on that. Yeah, I'll put a link on that if anyone wants to join. For the Purley business point of view, the website is our main portal, so everything that we're doing, we're putting onto the website. We've got a fairly active WhatsApp group that's been coming back with a few really good wins on there that's been supporting people. Alternatively, do call and contact us. I've been supporting people as well on the phone with some of the processes and issues that's been going on. And also look out for updates on Facebook. Please update us on how your businesses are doing. We're going to have 2 different pages. We've got one at the moment for food related businesses. We're going to have another one for non-food related businesses of what the status of play they are. So whether they are closed, working remotely, doing deliveries, visiting or whatever. So those updates, and let us know how that goes. If I can just move on now to Peter from Streeter Marshall.
Hello.
Hi, Peter. If there's anything from a legal point of view that you're able to share with the community?
Yeah, I mean, really, I suppose I'm primarily doing residential conveyancing. So we're doing wills and probate as well. So we're finding obviously plenty of people are wanting to update their wills and do powers of attorney, and we're finding ways of trying to manage that. It's one of the more essential services the government are allowing people into offices to do. I'm working from home, as you can tell, but one of my colleagues is in our office who's basically holding the fort to make sure that the place is post is being scanned, etc. But we're finding a lot of people are wanting to update wills, and we're navigating ways of getting those signed whilst maintaining social distancing, etc. The thing we found probably most interesting, which may be interesting to people if you are involved in any conveyancing or know anyone who is, there are quite a lot of clauses that are doing the rounds because people want to exchange contracts but then sort of put a completion date in that sort of is at some point, or you put a date in, and there are some quite inventive clauses. Some of them are by fairly big well-known precedent banks, trying to enable people to do that, and essentially if there are various terms in it which would delay for various parts of lockdown. The problem with all of this is that most of these terms are quite ill-defined, and my concern is that if people do exchange with these sorts of provisions in place, whilst everyone may want the same thing right now, if the party decides they don't want the same thing when it comes to completion, I think there's way too much wriggle room. So as a whole, we're generally trying to avoid people using clever and inventive clauses to try and so instead we stick with more certainty. So I think what I would say is be cautious, and if you're in a conveyancing transaction or you're aware of it, be cautious about essentially about trying to put in something particularly inventive, because it may well come back to bite you. As a solicitor said to me, well, I think the lockdown has shown how well communities come together and how sort of the goodness of the human spirit. And I said, well, yes, that's true, but also it shows people hoard toilet rolls. And the reality is when push comes to shove, unfortunately, people will act in self-interest. So it's not very good having legal clauses that are relying on people's goodwill, because I'm afraid at some point that will don't sound miserly or miserable, but the reality is people will act in self-interest. So we're just all sort of suggesting caution. And obviously there are a few completions that are happening, and people are moving where they're moving into empty properties and where contracts have already been exchanged. But obviously, you know, it's all very limited. But we are finding some work continuing, and we're able to offer the most of our legal services now, certainly in Streeter Marshall, across people's homes, and that's working quite well. And so yes, and obviously very interested to hear all that's been going on in the business community in Purley. We're grateful for that. There's not much more I think I have to add.
No, oh, thank you. No, Peter, anything that's useful. There's a community, as you say.
Simon, can I ask a very quick question to Peter, if I may? Hello, Peter.
Hi.
Working in financial services, I'm hearing a lot of stories of people that were sort of purchasing properties, and obviously this has sort of happened halfway through. Can I just sort of ask a question from a legal point of view? So if someone had exchanged contracts before the lockdown, then after the lockdown has taken place, people have sort of taken a different view on progressing. Where do they stand legally? If you've exchanged contracts, does it still apply, or does this unprecedented scenario that we find ourselves in throw another spin on it? What's the legal framework?
It's a good question. The simple answer, the basic answer is if you've contracted to move, then you've got to move unless you can renegotiate out of it. There are some clauses, because most people are in the same boat. There are some clauses that have been put together to enable people to mutually agree a varied completion date. The problem with that, of course, is if there's mortgage finance involved, there is going to be a deadline on that, which might well be before lockdown is lifted. We've seen an email this morning that Santander are automatically extending a request all mortgage offers by 2 months. So that's going to help, but obviously that's just one lender and not all of them will be doing that. Ultimately, this is the reality is people. There is an old doctrine of frustration, which says if there is an intervening event where you literally cannot perform the contract, there are ways of getting out of it. The argument will be whether or not this is severe enough. It probably is. So I think there will be ways of negotiating, but it'll be negotiating out of contracts rather than anything else, I think, at this stage. I don't think there's much mood for litigation right now, and I'm not sure the courts can handle it if there were. So I think that the reality is, when we've had some that this has happened on, we've been just negotiating between the solicitors, and the parties have been negotiating. You're in a strong position if you're selling and you're already left, because obviously then you can just hand over a signed transfer and you've done your part. It's a harder position if you're a buyer, because obviously you've got to do something and hand money over, particularly if you're stuck in a chain. Relatively, we've had most completions often happen a week or two after exchange. So to be honest, there are relatively few, and most of them have now resolved already. There are a few where there are longer completion dates, but classically these days it's a week or two between exchange and completion. So most of those issues have probably been resolved. But it's a fair question. The answer is probably negotiate, but there's a doctrine of frustration which might kick in.
Okay.
Thanks, really good info. Again, just wrapping up here, really. No, thanks all for coming on board. A few things I'd like to cover off in wrapping up. Look, use the resources that are available for you. That people are coming together and are supporting each other 95% of the time. There are, however, as Peter was alluding to, people who have got self-interest at heart, and we've seen a fair few spam emails, a fair few fraudulent things going on. We've also got a whole load of businesses that are empty, so the security of our premises is going to be of a concern at the moment, and I'm going to look to see if that can be a focus of a topic for a further week's discussion that's going on at the moment, and how we can support ourselves on that. So it's a big cautious with emails that are coming on. Do check their URLs, etc., and the intentions of some people. We will share this video to the wider community. Thank you all for it. Has anybody got any final summary information they'd want to share with the group? No, that's great. But there's plenty of information. I don't really want to be duplicating the information. There's loads about, for Purley businesses in particular, come to the Purley business website under the coronavirus bit. There's bits with regards to keeping people up to date with the status of your business, and how we as a bid are fully supporting you all and helping you through this process, and how council and other areas are helping as well. So if that's it, look, number one, everybody keep safe for the time being. To financially, look, reach out to people if you need any support, and we'll have a call this time next week as well. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye for now.